ask distinguished delegates to bear with us through the afternoon. The conference staff have been working extremely hard and are doing their very best to make certain that all documents are available in all languages. Because of the amount of work this afternoon and the scope of the task, I hope that distinguished delegates will understand if every document in every language isn't in its place precisely when we would all wish it to be. I'm sure you understand the problem, and I am confident that we will all be understanding. This afternoon, we shall consider the first report of Committee 1 on Agenda Item 2, entitled Programs for International Cooperation. I invite the rapporteur of Committee 1, Kirsten Oldfelt of Sweden, to present the committee's report in document A-Comp 70/9.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished delegates, the General Committee allocated 2 items to Committee 1 for its consideration. Item 9, the Declaration of Principles, and Item 11, the Programs for International Cooperation. The document now before you, A/Conference/70/9, only gives account of the proceedings and action taken by the committee as regards Item 11, Programs for International Cooperation. I will present the report concerning Item 9 later to the conference. First, Mr. President, let me say a few words about how the committee set about its work and arrived at the recommendations which we put before you for your approval, which are contained in Section 5 of this report. The committee began consideration of Item 11 with a general discussion which is briefly summarized in Section 2 of the report. At its 9th meeting, the committee decided to establish a working group of the whole to formulate a proposal regarding the programs for international cooperation. This was an open-ended working group with a core of 10 members drawn from 5 regions. The working group drew up a draft resolution which was a consolidation of proposals submitted by several governments. The draft resolution came before the committee. The committee adopted the preamble and chapters 1 through 9 of that draft resolution and decided to recommend that the General Assembly at its 31st session consider that text and take the final decision on Chapter 10 concerning the organizational link. I should point out to you that in taking this action, the committee recognized that this decision would necessitate certain changes in related parts of the text of the resolution. This is why certain paragraphs appear in brackets. This applies to paragraphs 12, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 24 of the draft resolution. Preamble paragraphs 7 and 13, little c, were left in brackets pending a decision on the precise wording of these matters in the Declaration of Principles. Other paragraphs in brackets are those on which no agreement could be reached in the working group or in the committee. Mr. President, I would also like to indicate the following changes that should be made in this draft resolution. First, Preambular paragraph 6 should be amended to read as follows. Recognizing that human settlements and the steps to be taken to improve them should be considered an essential component of socio-economic development. This wording was by mistake not put into the text before you. The second amendment relates to a proposal by the delegation by the Philippines, originally contained in the annex to A Conference 70C/L9. This should be included in the appendix to the present draft resolution, and paragraph 19 of the chapter Reservations Submitted by Governments should in consequence be deleted. I would also like to draw your attention to the following. Several proposals were introduced yesterday by the Vice Chairman of the Working Group on item 11 for a set of criteria on the institutional arrangements. They will be inserted as part of the appendix to draft resolution A under section 10, paragraph 40B. Additional reservations made by governments to this draft resolution will be issued as part of the report. The fact is that we got those reservations late yesterday. I and the Secretariat did our very best, but still this is a preliminary version of the report, and it will be cleaned up and they will all be put in the final version. All those reservations should go before the General Assembly in connection with its consideration of the question. Mr. President, the report also contains two other resolutions which it recommends for adoption by the conference. Draft Resolution B relates to the financial implications of any new institutional arrangement, and Draft Resolution C relates to post-habitat use of the audiovisual material. Mr. President, the report is a bit complicated. It reflects complicated procedures in the committee concerning this item. I would like very much to thank the delegates of Committee 1 for their cooperation and the chairman who guided our deliberations on this item. And last but not least, I would like to thank my friends in the Secretariat who helped me put this together under some hectic night hours. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. Oldfelt, the rapporteur of Committee 1. I should like to remind delegates that in accordance with the decisions of the conference at its 6th plenary meeting on the 2nd of June, delegations will be given an opportunity to make statements on the recommendations of the committee only after action has been taken on them. I now invite delegates to turn their attention first to Part 1 of the report, consisting of sections 1 to 4 on the organization of work, summary of general discussion, etc. May I take it that the conference takes note of that part of the report? Then it is so decided. We turn now to Part 2 of the report containing the recommendations of the committee. We'll deal first with draft resolution A and the annex. Sir, any question on resolution A and the annex? The distinguished representative of the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to thank the distinguished rapporteur of Committee 1 for her work, and in this meeting for referring to the Philippine proposals to be included in the paper 70-9. I would just request at this point, Mr. President, that the reference to the pages in the Philippine proposals should be looked into and corrected by the Secretariat. Because of the amendments that were introduced, the pages have somewhat changed. Thank you, sir.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Philippines. The distinguished representative of Australia.
Mr. President, on page 1, 2, and 3 of this recommendation, draft resolution, there are words in square brackets. Now, my understanding is that the words on page 1, as the footnote indicates, will be replaced by whatever words are adopted in the preamble to the Declaration of Principles. I suppose that the same is intended for the words on page 2, since there is a further footnote, but I'm not sure what is intended for the words on page 3. Might we have an explanation of that? There are, in fact, a number of sets of words in square brackets in that section.
I would ask Ms. Oldfelt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to say in reply to the distinguished delegate from Australia that the words in square bracket in paragraph 9 belongs to those on which the committee simply did not reach any agreement. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Is there any further question on the distinguished representative of Australia?
I thank the distinguished rapporteur for her comment on paragraph 9, and I presume the same applies to paragraph 12, but may I have a clarification? Is it the understanding of the President or the rapporteur that the words on pages 1 and 2 are to be replaced by the appropriate words from the Declaration? Thank you.
Yes, that is my understanding. I thank the distinguished representative of Australia. I recognize the distinguished representative of the United States of America.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Could you repeat, or could the rapporteur repeat, the disposition of that paragraph on the bottom of Annex 1?
I would ask the distinguished rapporteur to respond.
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I correct in understanding that the distinguished delegate of the United States was referring to the 7th preamble paragraph? Correct. Yes. In that case, the square brackets indicate that the wording of that paragraph would be finalized in accordance with the wordings agreed on in the Declaration of Principle. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States and also give him the floor once more.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't understand what that means. What wording in the draft declaration?
The distinguished rapporteur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know how specific I can be on this. It was our understanding in the committee that in the Declaration of Principles, in the deliberations on the Declaration of Principles, there was being debated specific wordings as regards the Declaration and Program of Action and the Charter of Economic Rights and the new international economic orders. Now, the feeling of the committee as regards this item was that instead of discussing this issue also in relation to this paragraph, we could await the outcome of the deliberations on the Declaration of Principles. Thank you.
The distinguished delegate from Denmark.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, excuse me, I am a little puzzled over the square brackets on page 3. I've never experienced in an international meeting that you adopt a resolution or recommendation by consensus and then have something in square brackets where there's no consensus. What is the standing of this square brackets there, or the words within the square brackets? Thank you, Mr. President.
The consensus was that that should be shown in, as I understand it, in square brackets as a matter discussed but on which consensus could not be agreed, but it should remain in for guidance of the General Assembly. The distinguished representative of Tunisia.
Thank you, Mr. President. After the explanations given, I should like to propose the deletion in page 3 of the preamble, to delete the bracket and have the text without the bracket. Paragraph 9 of page 3. Because here no reference is made to any essential document. So let us therefore delete the bracket in paragraph 9 now on page 3. Thank you.
If that is the wish of the conference to do so, we can decide it. If there's, I'd like to see if there's any more comment on that. The distinguished representative of the United States.
As I understand it, Mr. Chairman, the proposal was to delete the brackets and leave the language as it stands. Which one? My mistake. I withdraw, Mr. Chairman. I was referring to the wrong paragraph. I'm sorry, I didn't even know that.
What if it is agreeable to the distinguished representative of the USSR?
Mr. President, I should like to make a comment on this. I should like to ask whether the proposal to transmit this point, paragraph 10, to the General Assembly, to the Secretary General, does this proposal concern the entire document, or should we transmit to the General Assembly only the question of organization? Could the rest be adopted? What exactly is to be transmitted to the General Assembly? Thank you, sir.
You're supposed to switch off in here, the English.
Right, the proposal is to delete the square brackets and leave the text in as it is, and that must be a decision of the conference. Right, the distinguished representative of Zambia.
Mr. President, I merely wish to agree with the proposal from the distinguished representative of Tunisia that we remove the brackets. In the first place, I don't see anything on which we could disagree. There is nothing controversial, and all that is being proposed is that is merely that special attention should be paid to the needs of the least advantaged countries in terms of making available low-interest loans. So it doesn't appear to be very controversial, and I'm sure that the plenary can agree on this one because it doesn't commit anybody to anything beyond what they can do. Thanks.
I thank the distinguished representative of Zambia and give the floor to the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Papua New Guinea delegation had a reservation about the deletion of the words in the brackets in paragraph 12, replacing the existing Committee for Housing, Building and Planning. We would like to suggest that this plenary delete those words as they produce an internal inconsistency within the document and favour one of the two alternatives as is mentioned in Chapter 10 of this proposal.
I thank the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea. We are now on paragraph 9. If we could deal with that and then come to the other paragraphs as they are dealt with. Is it the wish of the conference then to delete the square brackets and leave in the wording on page 3, paragraph 9, so that remains a complete paragraph without the square brackets, without the reservations? If that is generally agreed, then it is so decided. It's my understanding that the square brackets on paragraph 12 refer to the institutional linkage, which has to be determined by the General Assembly, and that could not be determined at this time. This means that it must stay as it is. The distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea.
That is certainly true, Mr. President, but it seems to be that it would be more appropriate for that reason to have it deleted.
Excuse me, the distinguished representative from Papua New Guinea is suggesting deleting the part that's within the brackets or deleting the brackets?
Deleting the part between the brackets and of course, the brackets.
I think that... I thank the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea and call on the distinguished representative of Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation also supports the proposal to delete not only the brackets, but also what is within the brackets. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Argentina. The distinguished representative of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would propose deleting the brackets around that phrase and leaving the phrase in. And I would like to explain why. In our discussions in the preparation of that paper, we had, in the working group, proposed a neutral formulation with respect to an intergovernmental body. But since we left the options about the organizational link open, this would mean that if the decision, in this case of the General Assembly, were to be for an organizational link to UNEP, then in that case it was felt that the intergovernmental body would be the UNEP Governing Council. On the other hand, if the decision of the General Assembly were to make a provision for an organizational link with the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, then the intergovernmental body of up to, I believe it is, 58 members would replace the Committee on Housing, Building, and Planning. So I think if those brackets were to be removed and the phrase left as it is stated, this would perhaps enhance the clarity of the particular provision. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States and give the floor to the distinguished representative of Zambia.
Mr. President, if we agree to what the delegate of the USA is proposing, I think that he will be having his cake and eating it as well. If I have said that we are leaving the decision to be decided by the General Assembly to say, as we say in the bracket, that one of the organizations should be replaced or should be revamped, anything should happen to it, would appear, in my view, to be prejudging the decision of the General Assembly. So it's either we decide here on the institutional arrangements, and if we decide that the body to be set up to look after human settlement will go to any other organ other than the existing housing, building, planning, then we delete that. But if the decision is not within our competence, then we should not say anything on the institutional arrangement because we will appear to be prejudging the decision of the General Assembly. So I think that the proposal of the delegate from Papua New Guinea and Argentina is at least logically consistent. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Zambia and call on the distinguished representative of the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. President. My delegation supports the proposal submitted by the distinguished representative of Papua New Guinea and supported by a couple of delegations. In order that we would not in any way prejudice the decision on the institutional arrangements, this paragraph should, this phrase in brackets should be deleted, of course including the brackets, to repeat the words of a speaker before me. We want here a neutral formulation which would not in any way prejudice the work of the General Assembly and the determination of what institutional arrangement has to be adopted or followed. Thank you.
The distinguished representative of Guinea. Excuse me, the distinguished representative of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Kenya delegation would like to support the views expressed by those who have spoken before us, supporting the deletion of the words in paragraph 12C, the words in brackets, because we also feel, just like it's been already expressed by others, that this phrase in the bracket is prejudicial in favor of the center and should have been deleted. And we had expressed these views at the deliberations of the committee, and the views are incorporated in this document before us on page 16. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kenya. It seems to me we've had an expression of views on this. We have three choices, as I understand them. The one is to delete the whole portion, including the brackets. The second one is to delete the brackets. The third one is to leave it precisely as it is. I guess the fourth one from the representative of Papua New Guinea, to just leave the brackets in and take everything else out, would not require a vote. As the rules require that I deal with what is the most significant of those proposals first, that's a judgment the chairman must make, I guess, is that which deals with removing that entire section within the brackets, including the brackets. And I will ask for a show of hands of those who are in favor of completely deleting the bracketed portions and the brackets. Those in favor of removing the entire section in the square brackets and the square brackets.
Same delegation.
Those who are opposed to removing that entire section within the brackets and the brackets. May I ask for those who would abstain? The result of the vote is for removing the entire part 53, against 14, abstentions 2. So that page 3, paragraph 12, ends with the words geographic distribution, full stop. Is there any further comment on draft resolution A and annex? I gather then that we can adopt that by consensus. And then it's so decided. Draft Resolution B refers to the financial implications of the alternative institutional arrangements. I take it that it is the wish of the conference to adopt Draft Resolution B. If there is no comment, then it is so decided. We now turn to Draft Resolution C, relating to the post-habitat use of the audiovisual material. If I hear no comment, I will consider it the distinguished representative of Portugal.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. In regard to this draft resolution, I have a comment to make on page 15, line 2. Noting that the Governing Council of the United Nations Development Programme, I believe that this is a mistake. It should be the United Nations Environmental Programme. Thank you, sir.
I thank the distinguished representative of Portugal. I just will have to check the French text. I wonder if the distinguished representative of Portugal could just identify the point again. We're having some difficulty locating it in our text.
Non, thank you very much. Je me rapporte à la version.
I'm referring to the French text, page 15, second line. The preamble, the first paragraph of the French version, page 15, which begins, noting that the Governing Council of the United Nations Development Program has recommended, etc. I believe, my delegation believes, because we attended that session in Nairobi, that that was the United Nations Environmental Program, not UNDP. So it should read UNEP instead of UNDP.
I wish to thank the distinguished representative of Portugal. There has been an error there in the French text, and we'll see that that is corrected. And if it's the same in any other text, it will be corrected there as well. If I hear no further comment, then may I take it that the conference adopts draft resolution C? Then it is so decided. The rapporteur of the committee wishes to introduce.
No, first the reservations.
Yeah.
Be reservations.
Okay.
Transmitted with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then I take it that the reservations on page 13 of the English text will also be transmitted along with the draft resolutions just adopted.
All the 13 and following. All following
Yes.
page. Beginning
13, yeah, that's beginning on 13 and following right through to page 22. If that is the wish of the conference, then it is so decided. I'll call on the rapporteur of Committee 1 to introduce the addendum.
Thank you, Mr. President. The conference also has before it for consideration the document entitled A Conference 70/9, Addendum 1. This relates also to Agenda Item 11. The committee dealt with this morning. It therefore could not be included in the report. The addendum refers to a proposal of the delegations of Algeria and Egypt in relation to the living conditions of the Palestinians in occupied territories. I believe that delegates have the document before them, so that I would not have to read out the text. The draft resolution was amended this morning, the present operative part, which is on page 2, reads as follows: recommends to the General Assembly at its 31st session to request the Secretary General of the United Nations to prepare and submit to the 32nd session of the General Assembly a report on the living conditions of the Palestinian people in the occupied territory. The committee, at its deliberations, decided to refer this draft resolution directly to the plenary of the conference for its decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President.
I thank the rapporteur of Committee 1. L6 and L7. Is it the wish of the conference that this report be adopted for consideration of the General Assembly? Yeah. This is document A-Comp 70/L6. This is a draft resolution. I believe it is in your hands now, referring to living conditions of Palestinians in occupied territories, a draft resolution of Algeria and Egypt. Can I take it that the distinguished representative of Israel?
Mr. President, I should like to speak on this item. I don't know if this is the appropriate time or you'd wish me to speak at a later stage. I'm prepared to speak now.
If the distinguished representative of Israel wants to speak to it before a vote or tell us before it's accepted by the conference, he may speak now, or he may wish to state reservations afterwards. If you wish, but if it is the distinguished delegate's wish to speak now, he may do so, and I give him the floor.
Mr. President, from the point of view of the true purposes of this conference on human settlement, it is exceedingly regrettable that a resolution such as that introduced by Algeria and Egypt should be brought before this plenary session. For its object is not genuine concern for human settlement or living conditions in general, or in any specific instance, but purely political. In other words, this is just one more tired act in the well-known traveling Arab circus. Now, it has been said, Mr. President, that any intergovernmental conference must concern itself with political matters, and that Habitat is no exception. But there are two kinds of politics. One deals with matters which are essentially within the purview and the capabilities of Habitat, such as policies on land, on water, and on institutional structure, on urbanization and such matters, which can be both national and international in character. It is essential to discuss these here because they are what this conference is all about. The other kind of politics is propaganda, harassment, and disruption. Its purpose is to exploit the conference to score debating points and to deflect it from its work. This is the nature of the resolution, the report which is now before the plenary. It is outside the mandate and competence of Habitat. It is frivolous and vexatious. Moreover, it is unnecessary. No subject in the United Nations has been investigated and reported on within the UN and the specialized agencies more than that of the Palestinians. The General Assembly of the United Nations discusses every year 3 or 4 reports on various aspects of the life of the Palestinian Arabs, which more than cover everything that could be included in a report such as that called for in this resolution. Similar reports are discussed every year according to subject in most of the specialized agencies. And as Israel is an open country where the press and public have free access everywhere, and because Israel has a liberal policy of open bridges across the Jordan, which makes possible a vast exchange of visits every year, which runs into hundreds of thousands with the Arab states, everything that could possibly be expected to be known about the living conditions of the Palestine Arabs under Israeli jurisdiction is already known and published. This resolution is also a very typical example of the type of document put forward by Arab countries on this subject. First, you allege that the position is bad. In this case, it is stated as a fact that the cultural habitat of the Palestinian Arabs has been willfully destroyed, which is not something confirmed in any report of UNESCO, which is the competent UN body. And then you call for the establishment of a special committee to confirm the allegation. And if by some mischance the special committee does not do what is expected of it, that is to say, it establishes that the allegations are untrue and that the situation investigated is in fact satisfactory from any reasonable point of view, then the members of the inquiry committee are condemned as liars and dupes and their report discarded and a new inquiry ordered. This has happened twice in the World Health Organization, for example, in 1972 and only a month ago at the World Health Assembly in Geneva. The Israel delegation will vote against this resolution, this report, and hopes that other delegations will do the same. It should be clear in any case that Israel will not cooperate in any way with the implementation of this resolution if adopted. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Israel and recognize the distinguished representative of Egypt.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I thought at the beginning that this draft resolution was going to be adopted by consensus. And as a matter of fact, the Egyptian delegation believes that this draft resolution is a follow-up of a previous resolution that has been taken in the preparatory regional conference which was held in Tehran in June 1975, and it has called upon the Secretary General of Habitat to present to this conference in Vancouver an overall picture of living conditions of the Palestinians in the occupied Arab territories. However, I believe that the speaker who has spoken before me would have welcomed that such a committee be sent over to the occupied territories to investigate the conditions of the indigenous inhabitants, had he not have any doubt or any fear that the report of the Commission will be condemning. I need not refer to what has been adopted in the 18th Conference of UNESCO in 1974, which has withheld assistance on Israel because of destroying the cultural heritage in Jerusalem. It's needless to mention that this draft resolution, once more, is a follow-up of a previous resolution taken by the Regional Conference of Habitat, which was the preparatory work done. Otherwise, this meeting would have not convened had it not been for such regional conferences. I'm positive that Israel will adamantly reject the reception of any committee to investigate conditions of the Palestinians in the occupied Arab territories, because then the political expose of what is happening actually will be condemning enough to Israel in that matter. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, the Egyptian delegation is tired of hearing that this conference is a purely technical one. We are quite positive that human settlements are but a climax, a culmination of a multiplicity of factors: social, economic, geographical, historical, and political. Hence, the political issues could never be severed by any conceivable way from the context of what we are tackling. Once more, I call upon you, Mr. President, to try to adopt this resolution, this draft resolution, by consensus. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Egypt, but the conference can only adopt something by consensus if a consensus exists. The distinguished representative of Israel.
Mr. President, I call for a vote on this report.
We'll now take the vote. Are you requesting a simple vote or a roll call vote?
Simple vote.
A show of hands.
By show of hands.
Okay. Yeah. The distinguished representative of Egypt.
President, I think now that this draft resolution is going to be voted upon, I urge you to have a roll call for this voting. Thank you, Mr. President.
The distinguished representative of Oman.
Thank you, Mr. President. What I wanted to ask for, the distinguished representative of Egypt has already done so, and I'm all for that. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Oman and call on the distinguished representative of Morocco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voulais également...
Thank you, sir. I also wanted to propose that we hold a roll call vote.
I thank the distinguished representative of Morocco. Does the distinguished representative of Algeria still want the floor? The distinguished representative of Algeria.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, sir. Before asking for a roll call vote, I'd like to say something to you very rapidly. I find it difficult to imagine how can we say that we are playing politics when we ask that impartial observers investigate conditions of life in an occupied territory and report to the General Assembly. Nor do I understand how we could describe the policy pursued, including in the matter of human settlements, by an occupying power to the detriment of a people living in deplorable circumstances.
I thank the distinguished representative of Algeria and shall proceed with the roll call vote. The vote shall begin with Ghana.
President, we are taking vote on document A-70L6, and I'm starting from Ghana. 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 Abstention. Greece. Yes. Grenada.
Yes.
Yes. Guatemala.
Abstain.
Abstain. Guinea-Bissau. Absent. Guyana.
Abstain.
Abstain. Haiti. Abstain. Holy See. Absent. Honduras.